Hey guys.
Hey,
Hey,
Josh.
Josh.
We will get started in 1 minute. We do have a special guest on today that we are excited to have, Mr. Craig Bolster. I'll introduce him shortly. Those of you at Keller Williams Excel should know who Craig Bolster is. He's always in the office and always a smiling face. And he is the subject matter expert that we're going to lean on here today to talk us through a topic that, although it's freezing cold out right now, you can still door knock, you can still farm. And kind of the strategy behind talking about it now is, hey, maybe you don't go out right now today and go door knock, but Craig's going to share with us how he approaches maybe the winter months, but also you can at least start to build a foundation of knowledge and systems around how you're going to approach it maybe in 2023, if that's one of your ways that you're going to generate leads. So I will open it up here in a moment and we'll talk to Craig. While we wait for some additional folks to jump on here, true life story here. So this type of market, if anyone knows the market that we're currently in, it's a little slower than it was several months ago. And I want to be an encourager to you that if you've ever thought about investing in real estate, this is probably the best chance that you've had in the last few years to purchase a home for less than list price. Homes are sitting on the market a little bit longer than they had in the past. And so true story. I got a referral from an agent in Florida who I'd never met before, but they found me on Zillow, and they also found me as a KW agent through Command, and referred me somebody who was a foreign seller, wanted to sell their property in Columbus while the getting was good. So I walked through this a month or so ago, and talked with the guy and said, hey, like, if you want to make this easy, I might consider buying it. So this is considered an off-market property. And so we agree to terms. We're almost to the closing deadline here, and the lender had an appraiser walk through, and the appraiser found like this much mold or organic growth in the corner of the basement. And so this is a true life scenario of what you guys are going to be anticipating when you go through the closing process with a buyer, or as the seller side, like things that you can anticipate hearing from an appraiser. And so before the lender is going to lend me money to close on this house, we had to remedy that situation. So my guy, I told you he's a foreign investor, meaning he lives in Hawaii. He's not going to be able to come fix this. And so I said, hey, I'll take 10 minutes of my time. I'll go over there and wipe down the basement wall, and we'll be done. And so that's what I was just doing. So just case in point, like these are some hurdles that you might anticipate as you're going through the closing process. I just thought that I'd share as a precursor to what you may encounter. But let's move on to Mr. Craig Bolster. Craig, I'm going to introduce you really quickly, and then I'll give you a chance to talk a little bit more about yourself and tell what I'd love for you to share with the team, like how long you've been in the industry and what your business looks like. But before I do that, Craig and I started at Keller Williams Excel pretty much right after each other. So we've been at Excel for nearly 5 years now.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, almost 5 years, man. I've been in the industry almost 5. So Craig and Amy came from Coldwell Banker, and they can share a little bit more about that if he wishes. But he came from a restaurant background, so he wasn't always in real estate, and he has found a special niche in his own neighborhood. So Craig, I'm gonna spin it over to you here. Why don't you talk a little bit about yourself, and then just share just a little bit about what your business looks like and how you have adopted, how you got into door knocking / farming.
All right. I've been licensed since 2011. Been doing it full time since then. My wife got licensed in 14, but she's only been doing it full time for about 5 years now. But she and I are a real estate team along with our assistant, Julie. which we just got her about a year ago now. So we're happy to have her. We kind of bounced around through other agents or other administrative assistants before that, but we're happy to have Julie stick around as long as she has. Yeah, so in 2011, I did a lot of expired listings, and I would go after those. I had a mailing system. I would actually go to the door and knock on the door and try to get the expireds right there. And that was fairly successful, but as the market kept warming up over time, the number of expireds and cancels just kind of dwindled. And so to make up that difference, I started door knocking, since I kind of was already doing it just on a small scale. And I picked the thing with the door knocking is you want to pick your target area correctly. Thankfully, it was my neighborhood was part of the farm, but you want to find an area that has a greater than 6% turnover annually. Obviously, higher is better, more chance, more bites at the apple. You want to find an area that doesn't have a dominant agent, some agent that's already doing better than 20%. That's not exactly the best neighborhood to go after. But those two things, and then you want to find the size of a neighborhood that is good for your budget. Are you going to be doing direct mail to them? Are you going to be door knocking? Are you going to do a combination of both? Whatever system that you're going to put in place, just make sure the size of it is, your budget holds for it. So when you're door knocking, my goal every day was 50 doors to knock on.
That's Monday through Friday, 5 days a week.
Huh?
5 days a week. You're talking like Monday through Friday.
Yeah, 5 days a week. So 250 doors. It's 1,000 doors a month. That sounds like a lot, but 50 doors in my neighborhood. It took most of the time. It took about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Some parts of the farm have bigger lots, and those houses take more. Smaller lots, the driveways are closer together. It takes a lot less time. But out of those 50 doors, I probably talked to usually 5 or 6 people that were actually home when I came by. And I always brought with me a letter and then some recent sales information about the neighborhood. And so when you knock on the door, I'd say 80% of the time no one's going to answer. So you leave something of value so they can remember you by. And also too, when they answer the door, you want to have something of value so you can give to them. And it usually breaks the ice. For example, when someone came to the door, I introduced myself and I say, I'm just letting everyone know about the recent home sales in the neighborhood. And usually that was enough. And I'm handing them the letter, and that was enough to break the ice. Whatever kind of hesitation they had, if any, was usually drift away. And then I asked them if they knew any of the neighbors that were thinking about moving. And most of the time it was no. A lot of times they'd stand at the doorway and start pointing and say, well, that one's kid just graduated, they might be thinking about it, or they just got a baby, so I don't think they're going anywhere for a while. They kind of run you through what's going on with the neighbors. And then, once they kind of let me know what's going on with the neighbors, I just asked them if they were thinking about moving. Most of the time it's no, but sometimes it's a hesitation. That's always, they're rarely going to say yes, but sometimes they'll hesitate. And that's usually your opening. If they hesitate at all, the answer is that they were thinking about it. And so maybe you just start probing a little bit more, asking where and where they like to move to, and those kinds of things. Just get into a conversation. A lot of times I'll switch over to my list of questions that I ask potential sellers if I'm talking to them on the phone. When do you want to move? Where do you want to move to? How long have you been here? Tell me a little bit about your house, all that stuff. So the point of the door knocking really isn't to get a listing right when you knock on the door. That's pretty rare, although it has happened. But rather just you're going to start a relationship with them. I do ask if they'd like to keep up to date on the sales in the neighborhood. And sometimes they'll say yes, they'll give you their phone and email, and then you can, put them on a search and a drip and keep in touch with them. But yeah, you just want to start getting to know people a little bit. I door knocked for probably 5 or 6 years, well, 5 years. And I'm still dealing with people that I talked to way back when. Either I'm still talking to them just about selling and they haven't sold yet, or they've turned into clients and we've sold their house and maybe sometimes bought another one. So it's been good.
So Craig, let's go back to when you first started, and we're talking with new agents here, and this is being recorded and will be uploaded to our coaching channel and stuff. So thank you for, number one, thank you for taking some time out of your day, and thanks for sharing some kept secrets here. But when you first started, was there some sort of like, were you nervous? Like, how did you overcome the nerves of just getting started?
Yeah, no, you're going to be nervous until you kind of build up that muscle. Everyone's worried about the angry person at the door. Those people are very, very few. You're going to get many more people who are very polite. Some of them are generally excited to see you. I actually this weekend, or no, this summer, we had somebody selling by who I met initially door knocking, that she was home during her maternity leave and she was bored to tears and wanted to talk to a grown-up. So sometimes they're just very excited to talk to you. Especially if you want to chat about the neighborhood. That most people are happy to chat about what's going on in their neighborhood.
When you approach a door that says no soliciting, and we're all going to pick neighborhoods that have this, how do you approach that conversation? Does it ever come up? What do you do in that situation?
The no soliciting doors, I just leave the information. I don't knock on the door, since they've clearly said they don't want anybody to approach them. So, but I do leave the information because I think it's a value and people like it. I've never had anyone call me and tell me not to leave the info. That's fine. Cool. I will back up a second. When you're picking your farm, the area that you want to door knock, make sure you check with make sure it's okay to do so. The area that I door knock, they have what they call a transient vendor's license that you have to get. I had to go to the Genoa Township Police Department and get a little $25 license to be able to go walk around. It's kind of funny, but I mean, they took my fingerprints and photo, and they did a background check, so to make sure I wasn't, troublesome person. So if whatever area that you choose, make sure you're staying within the rules.
Yeah, and so there have been a couple questions, and we're gonna hit those in a second. We're gonna keep going off of where we're currently at. So keep the questions, guys. Keep them coming in the chats, and we'll get to them for sure. So Craig, you said you leave information for people. And now I'm assuming that's because you want to make sure that you're not just wasting your time with the 45 other people who don't answer their door, right?
Right.
And so that information that you leave, I'm going to assume that's something like a market snapshot. How do you go about creating that? What does that one page look like?
Sure.
Talk about that.
That one's a piece of cake. It's a saved search in my MLS. And so I just go to the save search in whatever neighborhood I'm knocking that day. I print the recent sales in the neighborhood. And that's one page. And then it's a 2-page thing that I drop. And the other page is just a letter talking about the recent kind of the market conditions and what's going on in the market these days. You don't need it as long as you have something. You obviously want to leave something with your contact info on it, but really you can get it straight off the MLS and you don't have to really think about it.
Okay, so pretty easy. And then also I know through Command we have access to what's called a neighborhood snap. which might be
Yeah.
another option that we can
Yeah.
all take. So if you log into command and you choose a neighborhood, you can get a snapshot of what that looks like. It might look a little bit more polished and professional than just pulling it off the MLS, but it is a little bit more time consuming perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay, so Abigail asks, what time of day do you typically focus on door knocking?
Kind of same time that you do your calls. Kind of somewhere between 9 and noon is typically when I do it. If it's a colder day or whatever, I might go in the afternoon just so it's a little warmer. But really, anytime's fine. You can even go on Saturdays. Like my license that I had, I could go on Saturdays before 6, but not at all on Sundays or holidays.
That's a good answer. And so my very first year in real estate, I attended Bold and we talked all about getting 100 contacts a week. And there were certain weeks where I just wanted to try new things. And so door knocking was one of those things. And this is a true life story. You guys may try various things in lead generation and you don't stick with it. And you're not going to bear fruit from things like Craig has with door knocking if you just do it one time. So my true story is I decided to go door knock a neighborhood, and I actually got through it a couple times, a couple cycles, and then it just fell off for whatever reason. But the day that I found that was most fruitful was Saturday mornings, especially like in the summer. Why? Because everyone's home on Saturday morning, and so my answer rate increased probably 5x.
Yeah.
So if you're considering what days and times, so Abigail, I know that you work another job. It may be fruitful for you to say, hey, I'm going to door knock for, instead of just 2 hours on a Saturday, I might do 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday and get a larger number of contacts. Cool. Now, Victor asks, have you ever door knocked an apartment complex?
No, never an apartment complex, always single family neighborhoods. I considered apartment complex because you can really, buzz through them pretty quickly. Most apartment complexes are going to have a management company, and the management company's probably not going to like you knocking on doors asking if they want to move out. So you might run into some resistance there.
Huh. That's a good call. One thing you can always do, and this has been my MO, is just plead ignorance and plead for forgiveness
Yeah,
later.
that's true.
I will say when I was door knocking, I did not go through the proper channels apparently and get my license. So I saved $25 and never had anyone holler at me. That being said, if you're doing something, and this is just common sense, if you're doing something and you don't realize it's not the right way to do things, literally just admit your fault and then go about correcting your actions. And so Craig just told you that you may need a license. You just something to keep in the back of your mind. Other questions here. So what does your system actually look like? So you mentioned trying to hit 50 homes a day, Monday through Friday. What does your system look like in the winter? Do you continue that up? And then is it the same touch all 12 months or do you change it up?
In the winter, I still go bundle up, wear gloves and a hat. It's fine. Obviously be safe. Don't go in extreme weather. But yeah, if it was a little cold, if it was 20 degrees, I still went. It's fine. As far as like the same, yeah, my farm was big enough that I could do the 50 doors a day, and I would get to the entire farm 4 times a year. So basically, everyone got the same touch. Obviously, the information was updated each time, so they got the most recent information. But it was basically the same touch each time. But that's the door knocking is one part of it. We also do direct mail to the neighborhood, and so everyone's seeing us that way. We have a grocery cart at the grocery store near the farm. People are seeing us that way. Anybody who gets that I get an email address from gets on our monthly newsletter, so they see us that way. So the key is to touch them often, as much as you can, really. We even have a banner on the high school baseball field, which is inside the farm. So people drive by and see our banner too. So it's door knocking is one part of an overall farming plan. If all you're doing is door knocking, it's going to be harder because you got to get those people. Once you introduce yourself, you got to hit them frequently, and you're going to feel like I just talked to this person, but everyone's got a busy life. They will have forgotten that they saw you 2 months ago within a week of you seeing them. So you can touch them much more often than you think you can.
Yeah, and the strategy here is no different than the strategy with your own sphere. Our database, we're supposed to touch 36 times in a year. Why do we do that? To stay top of mind. We want to be, I always say this, Crest or Colgate in their minds. So when you think of a toothbrush or toothpaste brand, you think of Crest or Colgate, and then there's a major drop off. When you think of real estate, you want to think of Sam Rice, right? And so how do you do that? You stay relevant in their eyes. So one thing that resonated with me with what Craig just said is 4 in-person communication opportunities over the course of a year. That's actually the same thing that Gary Keller says you want with your own sphere, your own database.
Yep.
You're inevitably not going to see the same person 4 times in the course of a year. Your odds are probably more like once a year. But when you offset that with mailers that they're guaranteed to at least hit their mailboxes, and then you offset it with banners or things like that, where they're subliminally seeing you, don't you think you're climbing the ladder in their minds, and you're going to be Crest or Colgate? The answer is absolutely yes. Talk to us about your mailers. Number one, how much does it cost, and what's your strategy around that? Do you send them out quarterly? What's the content of those? Are you sending out local schedules, or what does that look like?
Yeah, the farm gets the local, what we call the local cards, which we have a service with CITICOM, CITICOM. They produce a monthly calendar of events in and around Columbus, and that card, it's a postcard. It goes out to the farm. Also goes out to our sphere, and on there it just talks about, hey, there's a Buckeye game on the 23rd. There's a basketball game on the 30th. There's a Blue Jackets game. There's a concert, whatever might be going on in Columbus that month. They have a calendar of events that we send out to the whole farm. That's the kind of standard one. We also do. So I door knock 4 times a year, but then 4 times a year we also send a quarterly mailer, which is essentially the recent sales information that I usually bring in person. We just mail that out to everyone as well. So they're getting 8 times a year. They're getting that information either from me personally, from the just leaving it at the door, or getting in their mailbox too.
Okay.
The cost of it is going to be just determine how big a farm you have. We have a 3,000 home farm, so our monthly is it's like $600 or something like that. I'd have to double check. Our assistant,
one home sale is going to, yeah. So one home sale though is going to take care of your whole year on marketing.
Oh yeah.
Plus some, because your average price point's got to be pretty high. And that's one other thing to consider, guys. When you're deciding on a farm to select, make it one that might be worth your time. Okay, so if you're gonna farm an area that is, Section 8 or impoverished homes, like, it might be challenging. That being said, maybe you have a higher hit rate there. There's no wrong answer to this as long as you're out doing the work. That being said, you do want to make it worth your time. So look at average price point as well. Now, when you're going into research a farm to select, Sam and I were talking about this the other day, because he was wondering, like, because we were up to 6%, and he said, well, how do you calculate that? I encourage you to pair either do one of 2 things. You need to count the number of homes in your proposed area. You can do that through either manually driving up and down streets and counting, or you can pair with a title company. A title company can typically give you a snapshot of how many homes are in an area. from there, you're going to draw a circle around that neighborhood in the MLS and determine how many homes have sold. It's pretty simple to do that calculation. And if it's 6% or greater, you're in an area that is turning over. But also looking for a dominant agent. Sam asked, well, how do you know who's selling the properties? Look at the homes that have sold and who has sold them. You're going to have 2 agents per transaction typically. You're looking for repeat names. So if it's always Craig Balster, I know that Craig Balster has claimed his ground, and I'm going to stay away from Craig Balster. And so that's the how you derive a farm. Anything to add to that, Craig?
You can use Realist to figure out the number of homes that you want to take a look at too. That's an easy way. You can just look up the subdivision name, and I think it'll tell you the names or the amount of homes. Yeah, staying away from dominant agent is probably your best bet, especially if you're a new agent, so you don't have any name. It's funny because when I'm door knocking, I will occasionally come across door hangers or other flyers from other agents, and of course I look them up when I get back, and they're often are new agents, but I only see them once. I don't ever see them again. So the key to, like any marketing, is the consistency of it. They have to see you over and over and over again, so that you just become part of their day, and they're not, they're just used to seeing you. The Crest Colgate thing. If they just see you once, they're not going to remember you.
If you all take one thing away from this conversation, it's consistency. And that's what we talk about in everything: consistency and getting your lead gen done every day. And this is a great form of that. It's a form that gets you exercise. It's low cost. It's highly personal. It's relational based, and it's going to take time. And if you don't approach it with that in mind, if you think this is a one-stop cures all, you're in for a rude awakening. I do want to continue to ask a couple questions here. What do you say to people? So a lot of people that I hear who are just starting door knocking, they're like, I'm actually hoping for people not to answer because I don't know what I'm going to say to them. So talk to us about that. Like, are you small talking them, or is your script the same every time? Like, by now I'm sure you've become familiar with several people and maybe it's become easier. But going back, I mean, you kind of shared the script earlier. You say, hey, I'm a realtor in the area. I live in the neighborhood, and I've got some information about previous home sales in the neighborhood. Are you interested in that? Tell us more about what you say and how you approach that.
So yeah, when they come to the door, you just introduce yourself. I'm Craig Balster with Keller Williams. I'm walking the neighborhood, letting everyone know about the recent home sales, and I hand them the info. And then sometimes they'll pull it out. Sometimes they'll just say thank you. And then I say, do you know if any of the neighbors are thinking about moving? And that's where they'll say yes or no, or launch into the description of who's doing what in the neighborhood. And then I just ask them, have you ever, are you thinking about moving? And most of the time they're going to say no. And if there seems to be any interest at all, you just ask them, well, would you like to keep informed of any future home sales? And that oftentimes they'll say yes. And then that's where you get their email and phone. Obviously you're standing at the door, so you already have their physical address. And so once I have their email and phone, I have their name, their email, phone, and physical address. That's the four things Gary Keller wants you to get. And so then they can get a drip on all three of those, all three of those: their physical address, their email address, and their phone. So I call the neighborhood too.
So yet another touch. You call the neighborhood, you see them, you've got flyers, you've got mailers.
When we get a listing in the farm, we do a call around the open house. Hey, this is Craig Balster at Keller Williams. We have an open house this weekend, Sunday 2 to 4 at 123 Main Street. We're asking all the neighbors if they like to come by and see the house. Hope to see you Sunday. That kind of thing.
what is your system on keeping track of people? So let's say you walk up to 123 Main Street and they actually answer and you actually have a conversation and you get to know them a little bit. Is there some sort of note-taking system in place?
Yeah, I bring along with me, it's a clipboard with, spots for names and addresses and that kind of thing. And then you have a little conversation. And when I walk away, I make note of the address. If they had given me their phone and email, obviously that's on there. And then I just make a little note about whatever we talked about. Their kids are 2 and 5, Jimmy and Johnny, or, this and that, whatever they got going on. And then I get back to the office and my assistant will put that into our database, our CRM.
Awesome. And then is there some way that you're queued to that information when you're calling or when you're going around that 50 homes again?
Well, sure. Yeah. I don't typically look at it when I'm coming back door knocking. But if I'm picking up the call, it's just part of, anytime that you can bring up what you know about them from the past, they're more likely to kind of warm up to you. Hey, last time we talked, you were, we were ready to go to Vegas. How was your trip? So they're always very impressed that you remember that.
Yeah, and I'll also say this: when you choose inclement weather to door knock in, people are super impressed. You win
Yes.
brownie points. Now they might think you're a little crazy, but if you want to be Crest or Colgate, crazy stands out, right?
Yeah.
And they want somebody who's going to work day or night, rain or sleet, snow or sun for them. So consider that a brownie point,
Yeah, I will tell you I don't door knock hardly ever anymore in rain. I'll do it in the cold and I'll do it in the snow, but rain, I end up getting wet. The people end up getting wet. Everything I'm carrying, all the information is soaking wet. Anything I leave at the door, it just gets wet super fast. So that's the one kind of where I'm like, it just doesn't work well. But if it's cold and snowing, that's fine. Until it gets warm, you don't get wet, so it's fine.
Do you and Amy ever invite people? Do you ever conduct events for your farm?
We have, yeah. We've done a Kona Ice event where we just ran a Kona Ice truck. For those without kids, that's it's like shaved ice, and the kids they get like a snow cone of ice, and then they get to put the little flavors on themselves. Kids love it. It's sugar water on ice. But we announced the neighborhood we're going to be on Saturday afternoon from 2 to 4 or whatever, and just invite everybody to come. It's nice. We've gotten some leads off of it. I'm talking to somebody that's going to turn into a client here soon, so it's definitely worthwhile. It's just another touch. The fun thing about events often is the touches leading up to the event are more valuable than the events themselves, especially with your sphere and clients. If you're holding a client event, the best client event is where you touch them like 8 times before the event and then no one shows up. So your event's free and you've got all the touches. That's a joke. You want people to show up. So all the touches in advance of an event, whether it's a sphere event, a client event, a farm event, those are almost worth more. That way, too, the events, you're not directly asking for business. It's a little softer. Obviously, you're at the event. They're going to talk to you about real estate. You don't have to bring it up. That's what's nice about real estate. They know you're an agent. If they have any interest at all, they'll just say, "How's the market? We moved in 2 years ago, but now we have 2 more kids and house got too small." They'll bring it up. It's when you're an accountant, you kind of have to let people know you're an accountant. But when you're in real estate, people bring it up all the time.
And that's not Kona Ice, renting that for probably an hour, I would imagine.
That was like an hour. I think we did 2.
That
They
it's
have a
not
minimum,
expensive.
but They have a minimum. It was like $300. Um, but I think I'm not even sure we got to the minimum, but we were close. Um, so it wasn't overly expensive.
And to Craig's point, like I don't know how many times I've told you guys, like my main lead generation platform anymore is just the events that we hold. So those events look, sorry, those events look like a monthly thing, and I have now a reason to communicate with people, or a reason to invite people, a reason to talk to people. And so what Craig's talking about is I'm assuming that the lead up to that Kona Ice event was not just one door knock and let it be, because otherwise nobody would come, right? It was probably a door knock with a flyer left behind. It was probably a mailer. It was probably a phone call. It was probably, something else. And then the event happens. And then there's a reason to reach out again and say, hey, we're so sorry we missed you, but stay tuned because we're going to have another event in the future. You're creating fear of missing out. You are letting people know that you did something really cool for the community. You provided value. And it's just another reason to reach out. Sometimes we, especially as new agents, we struggle with a reason to reach out. I don't want to keep hitting them the same way. I don't want to be boring. I don't want to be vanilla. So hosting an event like that costs $300. Are you kidding me? That's a fraction, a small fraction of a transaction.
Yeah.
And now at the same time, I don't want you to go hosting events that you can't afford yet. Play red light, green light. But once you've closed a unit or two, consider these ways of easy, low-hanging fruit ways to communicate with your database or with your people you haven't met. This is more or less prospecting. Prospecting is like trying to come up with business out of thin air, people that you don't necessarily know, but you're trying to get into relationship with. So don't be afraid to throw a little bit of money down. The old mantra, you have to spend money to make money. It's true. You have to market. If all we do is sell a home and sit on all those dollars, consider how much you're growing your potential business. So I love the conversation, Craig.
Yeah, Josh is right about events, and even if you're starting out, when my second movie night, client movie night, it was me, my brother-in-law who had bought a house with me, and one client. That was my second year. That's all we did. Now our client events are over 100 people. So it doesn't matter if you don't have many clients. Do and invite anyone you can think of, because those are great touches. Hey,
what I'm hearing though is consistency. You didn't give up
yes.
after one time. You kept doing it.
Yep. Yeah, I went from 3 to 25 to 50 to, like I said, now over 100. So don't be discouraged if the numbers start small. You would expect them to, but they won't stay that way if you keep at it.
Real estate is a consistency game, guys, and that's the one thing I want you to take away from this. You have to hit the hammer every day, or hit the nail every day with that hammer. If you do so, you're going to start seeing results show up. If you just work once a week, what can you expect? You can expect once a week results. It's a job. And at the end of the day, we can make this job really fun through events or through getting out and getting exercise and getting to know new people. I promise you, those things are fun, but you do have to be intentional about them and put those things on your calendar. I'm assuming, Craig, you probably have door knocking or this form of lead generation on your daily calendar. Is that true?
Sure. Yep.
Cool. What percentage of your business would you approximate comes from door knocking now?
Well, we don't separate out door knocking, but the farm in general is 17%. The biggest chunk of our business, about 75%, is past client sphere and referrals from past clients in sphere.
Okay. So 17% dollars wise of your guys' business, that's a large chunk of change.
Yeah, so 17%. Yeah, it's just shy of $100,000, so it's good.
Would anyone like extra $100,000 GCI? I think I would. So I'm gonna end with this, and then we're gonna open up for questions. So, Craig, you were new a while back. I know you have gray hair now, so you're a little older, a little wiser.
That's from the
Any rec
kids.
any recommendations for those of us looking to get started with farming?
Yeah, selecting your farm is probably between that and your consistency of touches are the two things that will determine how successful you are. If you pick a farm that never turns over, or the price point isn't something that's worthwhile, or if you're trying to go up against someone who's got 30% of the listings in there, you're going to have a hard time. But if you pick a good active neighborhood that no one sells more than 1 or 2 homes in, you consistently touch them, you will gain market share. And having people call you is a lot more fun than begging them in person. So
Awesome. Craig, thank you so much. I'd like to
sure.
open up for additional questions. What do y'all have?
Yeah, so how
I
did
just
you,
want to say,
Ladies first. I think I heard Abigail start to speak.
okay. How did you kind of, when you first started, before you sold your first house, how did people take you seriously when you're knocking on houses and asking for their business?
Most of the time, no one asks how many homes you sold. Strangely, it's not a common question. And even if they did, just tell them you're getting started, and guess what? You're my first listing in this area, and I want to make sure I do everything I possibly can to make sure you have a great experience, so that I can sell the next bunch of listings in this neighborhood.
So you said you have like example of the listings that sold in the area. That can be like anyone sold it, not just you.
I'm sorry, Abigail, say that again.
Yeah, at the beginning, you mentioned that you normally leave them with like the paper that says the listings that sold in the area.
Oh, yeah,
So anyone sold those, not just you.
correct. Yeah, anybody. Yeah, because you're trying to provide something of value, and almost universally, everyone wants to know what the house down the street sold for.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
Abigail, I'll interject as well. You, especially starting out, do not need to market your own listings. Why? Because you don't have a lot of listings or any to start. So steal shamelessly from surrounding areas or just even ask. So that's why we always say, Abigail, like the best way to get your name out there and to get into action is to conduct open houses. So if Craig or myself or anybody else has an open house coming, ask if you can at least shadow, or if you can conduct it for us, because that is going to get you a reason to market to people. You can door knock ahead of that open house and say, hey, I'm holding an open house. You at no point did you just lie there, right? I'm holding an open house. I'm not saying I'm holding my listing. Nobody cares. Nobody's ever going to ask. Okay. You're holding an open house and you have a reason to market now. You can also call the area, door knock, send out flyers. You can make it sound like it's yours. All you need to do is ask for permission. Say, hey, Josh, would you mind if I marketed your open house? And 1,000 times out of 1,000, I'm going to say, absolutely. Bring me a buyer. Would love to do a deal with you.
Yeah, and tell me what you did so I can take credit for it with my seller.
There you go. Victor started to ask a question. What was your question, Vic?
I was just saying, telling Monster thank you for coming on and explaining door knocking to us.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's an excellent part of farming, and it makes it much more personal, and over time you start to see the same faces over and over again, and they get to know you. It's nice.
What other questions, guys? We got a few more minutes.
If someone else has another question, they can go, but I had another question too.
Sure.
Okay.
Let it rip.
Okay, so just to elaborate, you said you do this door knocking and then like the follow-up is you email them.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you get their email address? Do they just give it to you?
Yeah. When part of my script when I'm talking to them is I ask them if they'd like to keep informed of future home sales in the neighborhood. If they say yes, that's when I get their email and phone.
You have like a clipboard with you or something?
Yeah, I have a clipboard with me. Yeah.
And then you have some sort of system like an Excel sheet, or is that part of the Keller Williams system of knowing when to email them and keeping that
Yeah,
information?
no. So with the farm people who want to keep in touch with the neighborhood, I set them up on an MLS drip, MLS search, so it notifies them when something comes on the market or goes into contract or closes. And then also too, I put them in our constant contact so they get our email newsletter, and they go in our regular CRM too. Now, I'm sure Command has a nice. You put them in Command, and you can set them up on a drip automated info once a month or whatever.
Yeah. Craig is very blessed to have an administrative assistant that can help him with that. If you are a solo agent without that, just set aside, a half hour after you're done with door knocking. Make sure that you prioritize that as well to instantly when you get home, go ahead and put those people into your database.
Yeah.
Put a tag on them as well. Create a custom tag that states something to the effect of farm.
Yeah.
And then put notes in. So fully complete that, because if you just sit that clipboard on your desk and say, I'll get to it later, you're never going to get to it.
Yeah.
This is the most critical part probably of the whole door knocking experience, is actually retaining the records, because the fruit of real estate, guys, isn't in the initial conversation. It never is. The fruit is always in the follow-up. And so if I have their notes and a reason to communicate with them and to follow up, and as Craig said, hey, you said you're going to Vegas. How was that trip? You look like a rock star in their minds. And it was all because of the follow-up and your ability to do so. So make sure you're setting aside time until you get big enough to go hire your own administrative assistant to help with that you're doing that yourself. Sam, you're pushing the mute button. You go ahead and ask a question, Bubba.
I was just gonna wait my time. My question is is there a specific size of neighborhood that I should be looking for, or is that based more upon the budget that I would have for door knocking or for farming?
The size of it mostly has to do with your budget.
Okay.
Obviously, a bigger farm, you're going to spend more, but you're going to have more bites at the apple. A smaller farm, there are just going to be fewer listings with less homes. But if your budget dictates that you start small, then do that.
Okay.
Somebody else put some in the chat here.
Have you ever door knocked in the county, or do you stick to close knit communities? Oh, and have you ever door knocked out in the country, Kevin? Is that kind of your question?
Yeah, like homes that are farther apart rather than right beside each other.
I like homes that are closer together because it just takes less time. In my farm, there are a variety of neighborhoods. Some are smaller homes with smaller lots. Then we get to the bigger homes with big lots. I can go through the smaller home much more quickly than I can with the bigger lots. However, they're less expensive than some of the bigger ones. But like to go out to the country and door knock, that you're going to be a long time in between knocking on doors, so it's going to take a while. Country people might like that more. They might be impressed by the effort. So you might get a better rate of return as percentage of door knocks that way. But yeah, no, I've never really done it out in the country. It's always been suburban neighborhoods. Cool. Anyone else? No?
Going once. We got a subject matter expert here. I'll give you one last shot, guys. If we hang up here and you think of a question, Craig is always at the office. I'm happy to go on your behalf and get the answers to your question. But if no other questions, Craig, I really want to appreciate you. This was seriously awesome to bend the ear of somebody who knows what they're talking about and who is boots on the ground, man. You're actually out there doing it. And the key to your success, the key to $100,000 GCI, that's the way we should have titled this thing. That would have got more people on, is consistency. Consistency. And anything we do, guys, whether it's going to be door knocking, whether it's going to be cold calling, whether it's going to be social media, whether it's going to be hosting events, it is all in consistency and having a plan. So remember, Craig said it's simple, 50 doors a day. That's his plan. And he strategizes time in his day to do it. If you want to be successful at anything you're doing, it's all about consistency and having a plan. So thank you, Craig. And I'll be in the office to appreciate you with a handshake. Thanks, sir.
All right. See you guys later. Good luck.
See you guys.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Josh.